Manx Radio's Update with Lewis Foster.
Fast am I, it's 5 o'clock and welcome along to Update for Monday the 24th of February. Lewis in for Beth tonight as we take a half-hour look at all the latest news from the Isle of Man. Coming up, we'll be hearing from the director of the Cyber Security Centre after it was revealed that Manx residents lost £2.2 million to scammers last year. A Douglas man has been jailed for 6 years after causing the death of an Onchan resident by driving dangerously. And we'll be hearing about Manx Care's hopes of switching to a more community-focused model of care from April. All that and more, plus business, weather and sport, and what to watch out for on the roads. Let us know your thoughts. Text 166 177 or email studio@manxradio.com. First of all, Christian Jones has the headlines for us. Fast am I, Christian?
Fast am I. A Douglas man has been jailed for 6 years after causing the death of an Onchan resident by driving dangerously. 35-year-old Jackson Joseph Paul of Palace Road had denied the offence but was convicted after trial earlier this month. Manx people lost almost 3 times more money to scammers last year than in 2023.
From reports that we see from elsewhere in the world, we can see that the Isle of Man is not alone. Very similar scams are being perpetrated on residents of other countries.
That's Mike Hayward from the Isle of Man Cyber Security Centre there, and the organisation says around £2.2 million was lost last year. If you're flying through Liverpool in the coming weeks, you'll need to get there at least 3 hours ahead of your flight. Passengers are being warned of delays after several security lanes have been upgraded with new equipment, which allows them to keep liquids in their hand luggage. And let's meet 20-year-old Isla Gale.
The amount of support I've had off some people has been just overwhelming, but then other people, it just seems like they're still stuck in their old habits. And I hope that by pushing it forward and showing that a woman can do all this, that they will maybe think twice.
She's hoping to inspire more young people and women to take up careers in the fishing industry after becoming the first woman to ever pass a special maritime qualification. In the latest international news now, and it's been revealed a 19-year-old who's admitted murdering his mother and 2 siblings was planning a school attack. Nicholas Prosper shot Juliana Falcon and teenagers Carl and Giselle Prosper at a flat in Luton last year. An MP has been suspended to 2.5 months in prison after punching a constituent.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. And you won't threaten the MP ever again, will you?
Oh, is it Mike? Is it Mike?
Yes.
He's the local MP, Jono.
Oh, yeah.
Get him on camera. Get him on camera, Jono. He's the local MP.
Mike Amesbury admitted assaulting Paul Fellows in a late-night row in Frodsham last October. And Manchester United is predicting up to 200 further redundancies. 250 people lost their jobs last year under plans to improve the club's financial sustainability. Those are the Update News headlines, next at 6.
Christian Jones, grew on my head. Thank you. Now the weather, brought to you by Manx Glass and Glazing. Risk of a few showers around at first, but rest of this evening and tonight will be dry. Moderate to fresh southwest winds and a minimum temperature of 5 degrees tonight. Sunny intervals and only isolated showers tomorrow with a fresh westerly breeze that eases later in the day, top temperature of 8 degrees. Then generally cloudy on Wednesday with showers possibly merging into longer spells of rain at times. The fresh southwest wind will veer west and strengthen in the afternoon with a best temperature of 7 degrees. Sunset tonight at 6:15, not long now, and sunrise tomorrow morning at 17 minutes past 7.
Manx Glass and Glazing can supply and install single, double and triple glazing. Call 674 573 or visit the showroom on the Snugborough Trading Estate.
Cannell's Agricultural Supplies have been serving the good folk of the North for over 30 years, supplying homegrown wheats, whole and rolled oats, working clothing, fencing, animal feeds, parts, tools and emergency supplies. Call Julia on 880206 or find Cannell's on Facebook.
Patricia Wild Opticians is celebrating over 30 years of friendly, caring service in Farm Hill and Ramsey. Visit us for professional eye care with stress-free parking. Phone Patricia Wild Opticians on 813 977.
For over 25 years, Langness Maintenance Services have been the block paving specialists, including property maintenance, fencing and landscaping. Fast, reliable and competitive. For a free no-obligation quote, call Paddy on 49667. Langness Maintenance Services, 49667.
A ground source heat pump can save thousands of pounds a year, and you can harness this energy on island with Geothermal Limited, the water borehole experts. Visit drilling.im and see how a ground source heat pump borehole works. That's drilling.im.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
And the time is now 5:05. The family of an Onchan man who died after falling from the bonnet of a moving car say any punishment handed down to the driver is insignificant compared to the sentence they are living. Jordan Thomas suffered significant head injuries on Harbour Road on the 25th of February last year. News editor Tessa Hawley joins me in the studio now. Tessa, this is a story which we've been following for some time now. Can you tell us what happened at Douglas Courthouse today?
So today, almost a year to the day of that incident in Onchan, the man responsible for causing the death of 29-year-old Jordan Thomas was sentenced to 6 years in prison. Before we go any further, I'll just remind you that this report may find information which some listeners may find upsetting. Now, Jackson Paul, as you may recall, had stood trial after denying causing death by dangerous driving, but the 35-year-old was convicted by a jury on the 14th of February. Now, after Mr Thomas had climbed on the bonnet of Jackson Paul's car, he'd initially reversed before driving forwards at speed and then braking sharply, which led to Mr Thomas falling from the vehicle.
So who did the court hear from today?
Today, it was an opportunity for the family of Jordan Thomas to share their thoughts, and they did so via a victim impact statement written by Jordan's mother. Now, this was read to the court by Jordan's sister. Jordan's mother described her son as having a massive heart and huge energy, and said the grief caused by his death had struck down a whole family. Referencing the trial in which Jackson Paul was found guilty, she added, "Our trial is every day for the rest of our lives. The joy he brought us is no more."
And did Jackson Paul's advocate say anything further?
He did. He said the defendant had found himself in a terrifying situation on the night in question, saying the decisions he'd gone on to make had been made in the blink of an eye. He made mistakes, and those mistakes have ended in tragedy, the advocate added.
We know that Jackson Paul was jailed for 6 years today. What did the Deemster say about his actions on the night in question?
Well, he did acknowledge that Mr Thomas's behaviour, first of all, was unusual and something that had contributed significantly to his death. Had he not got on the bonnet, the tragedy would not have occurred, Deemster Graham Cook said, adding, "It's something I find deeply upsetting." But the Deemster told Jackson Paul that he'd made the deliberate decision to ignore the rules of the road and drive forwards with Mr Thomas on the bonnet, saying this was a highly dangerous manoeuvre. As well as imposing immediate custody, he also disqualified Jackson Paul from driving for 8 years.
Tessa, thank you, and a reminder that you can find more on this story at manxradio.com. The time now is 8 minutes past 5. You're listening to Update on Manx Radio. Manx people lost almost 3 times more money to scammers last year than in 2023. The Cyber Security Centre for the Isle of Man says £2.2 million was lost compared to around £860,000 the year before. It's now urging people who've fallen victim to a scam to report it. Mike Haywood is its director.
Well, unfortunately, it is an increase on 2023, where we had something like £860,000 of losses reported to us. So there's a significant increase on the year before.
Within the press release, one of the things that was talked about was some of the tailored scams aimed at local residents. What does this tell us about the people behind these scams?
I think it tells us 2 things. One, they recognise that the Isle of Man maybe has some wealthy individuals that would make it worth their while targeting the Isle of Man. And as a result, they're very much customising some of the scams to reflect familiar names and institutions on the Isle of Man to make them look more plausible.
And do you think it's likely that they're local or from overseas?
Almost certainly these are from overseas rather than Isle of Man based sort of criminals. So very few, if any, of these scams originate in the Isle of Man.
And does the fact that these scams have been tailor-made show that Manx residents are particularly vulnerable, or can the same be said for any part of the world?
Unfortunately, from reports that we see from elsewhere in the world and in the UK and in the Republic of Ireland, we can see that the Isle of Man is not alone. Very similar scams are being perpetrated on residents of other countries. We're just slightly unusual in that we have encouraged residents to report anything that they come across to us so that we can raise awareness. So it's just, I suppose, not that we're unusual, just that we've been fortunate in the goodwill of the public in reporting these things to us so that we can share these warnings with everybody else.
And you mentioned asking people to report it. When people have been scammed, what do you think puts them off coming forward?
Sometimes I suppose it could be that they may be embarrassed or not sure really whether we would be interested. Obviously, with the sophisticated nature and the more tailored approach, there's absolutely nothing to be embarrassed about. We always protect the confidentiality of anyone who makes a report to us and anonymize any of the details. And so from that point of view, we would encourage people to keep reporting it. And it may be sometimes that people think, oh, it was only a small amount. It wouldn't perhaps be worth my while reporting it. But obviously, if there is numerous attacks or scams of a similar nature, the sums of money can rapidly increase. So we would encourage people to report it even if it was only a small amount of money.
That's Mike Haywood, Director of the Cyber Security Centre, speaking to Amy Griffiths there.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
Charities on the Isle of Man say the findings of a recent social attitudes survey reflect some of the struggles they are working to address. The survey, released earlier this month, highlights concerns about the standard of living on the island. It found that those under 40 living on the Isle of Man are less satisfied or happy in their lives compared to the older demographic. The survey also found 13% of respondents went without heat, while 6.7% didn't get a cooked meal each day. It's a familiar picture for organisations here. David Gaughan from the Isle of Man Food Bank and Live at Home told Manx Radio demand for their services is on the increase.
Whilst over the last year or so we've been averaging round about 400 food parcels a month, in December, in the run up to Christmas, we actually gave out 156 food parcels in 1 week. And we're supporting 193 adults and 131 children. This is quite serious, really, that we have this level of support being required on the island at the present time. Food Bank originally was set up to support people in a crisis, and it was get in, get them sorted out, get them fed, etc., address the underlying issues, and then try and move on. But we are now seeing more and more people who, for no fault of their own, are really unable to move on. So we are supporting more people now on a longer term basis than the original short term, which we were seeking to achieve, and that in itself is quite worrying. The cost of living is increasing, the cost of heating and lighting is going up, and to a large extent, incomes are not keeping pace with that. But it is quite worrying. And I think the other thing that's quite worrying is that we are seeing, and this again is referred to in the survey, is loneliness and isolation. And that again means that people start to have mental health problems, physical health problems. They can deteriorate quite quickly, with not only catastrophic effects on the individual, but also an issue for the state.
David Gaughan there, speaking from the Isle of Man Food Bank. It's 13 minutes past 5. Manx Care will be hoping to switch to a more community-focused model of care from April. But there will still be a need for further financial controls and the need to look at the healthcare provider's workforce. Sean Cowper reports.
Manx Care's board is currently finalising work on its mandate, the document which sets out what services it's required to provide, and operational plan for the year ahead. It's the first time the organisation has been involved in putting the mandate together, with previous editions set out by the Department of Health and Social Care. At Manx Care's board meeting, Improvement Director Sean Stacey outlined some of the changes it will be looking to bring in.
We're moving to a more community-focused model of care, clinically led, so hopefully we will see through the plan changes in the operations team, strong clinical leadership driving the services that we provide. We can't change the need to support urgent and emergency care, And the definitions of those things are people require help quickly. And so we need to be able to respond to that need. But what we can do is coordinate our urgent and emergency care response across the island rather than having individual silos or tubes of care that don't join together.
Manx Care's financial challenges and the impact they've had on its services have been well documented in recent months. Mr Stacey admits funds will continue to be a factor, and it may be time for the health service to look at its staffing.
We are going to have to provide further kind of financial controls. We've got the need to look at what workforce we need going forward, but we also may need to look at what workforce we no longer require and how we might need to action that.
It was confirmed at the board meeting that the mandate and operational plan are due to be completed imminently, with a view to them being presented to Tynwald next month.
Sean Calper, Grommayet.
Manx Radio Travel, driven by Quayside Tyres and Service Centre.
Well, we'll start on the roads then. In Santon, there are temporary lights on the new Castletown Road between Ballavarton and Mount Murray for resurfacing work there. In Port Sodrick, temporary lights on the old Castletown Road at Quines Hill, 24 hours a day for ditching work. In Douglas, until the 4th of April, temporary lights on Lord Street, 24 hours a day for the demolition of the old Salvation Army building. In Peel, until the 24th of April, restrictions on the promenade between the bottom of Stanley Road and Walpole Road for demolition work there. Over to the airport, and we know it's been a busy afternoon there following yesterday's disruption, but having said that, it looks like most flights out on time as scheduled and no concern over tonight's departures either. A reminder, if you're travelling in from Liverpool John Lennon Airport anytime soon, you're being asked to arrive 3 hours before your flight. It's as several security lanes are being upgraded with brand new next generation equipment. You can find all the details about that at manxradio.com. And smooth sailing from the steam packet tonight and all this week as well. No concerns for the schedule. Manxman currently on her way back from Heysham, due to arrive back into Douglas tonight at 6:20.
Quayside Tyres and Service Centre with 1 year's free engine warranty from Castrol. Get more with Quayside. You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
And it's now 17 minutes past 5. The Chair of Ramsey Commissioners says an additional £2 million in the Housing Deficiency Fund isn't enough for local authorities to satisfy the housing need. Rob Cowell believes the budget set by Treasury is just words and hasn't put any money behind projects needed for the town. However, he says funding allocated to the Ramsey shipyard is great and hopes it will support them with current apprenticeship schemes and other fundamental work. Our local democracy reporter Emma Draper has been speaking to Mr Cowell.
Ramsey Commissioners does utilise the Housing Deficiency Fund because we're very keen on housing maintenance and trying to provide the best top quality accommodation that we can. The fact there's additional funding in the deficiency is good news for us because it may allow for extra projects, extra investment that we can capitalise on to increase the stock or to improve the stock. But the housing waiting list is a growing thing. The housing crisis is very much a real issue for people of the Isle of Man, and we're keen to facilitate. If central government give us the viability to do so, then we will be there to supply additional housing.
There'll be capital bids on social housing for Close Warry and Albert Road. How long have they been in the pipeline, and do you welcome this news, or do you think it's too little too late?
We very much welcome the news, but it's noise at the moment. Come On More is a project that's been ongoing for years, that they were going to close the unit. Obviously, we fought that best we can. That hasn't happened, thank God. But we're pushing on with trying to make a solution for Come On More. That is a central government issue. We have to have the funding. As is Albert Road. Again, that's been going on for years. And we've just demolished part of the site to clear it. But again, that's been utilised through RTC funds. That has not been led through investment through the DOI, which is the route it should have taken. We petition constantly for funds from DOI. And you end up often with a dialogue of blaming Treasury or blaming the DOI, and they'll bat between the two as to whatever suits best. But ultimately, yeah, we welcome the news. But as you say, is it too little too late? Well, ultimately, the list is getting longer and longer.
That's Chair of Ramsey Commissioners Rob Cowell there, speaking to local democracy reporter Emma Draper. Now, FC Isle of Man need to make the most of their chances in front of goal. That's the plea from the Ravens manager after their 1-1 draw with Colne at the weekend. The Manx side had 13 chances in the first half, but only Adam Adebayi's 7th minute strike found the back of the net. Paul Jones told our sports editor Rob Pritchard that confidence is key.
Just keep giving them lots of opportunities to finish, and we do that and have done that in training since the start of the new year, and you won't create that many chances in games of football and not score 2 or 3 goals every game. So it's just a case of keeping on going, believing it'll click and people will start putting chances away, and as long as we're still creating chances, that's the main thing really. And maybe people are just a little bit, I don't know, maybe just not taking the ball by the horns, or I don't know what it is really, to be honest, because we try and reassure them and give them as much confidence as possible, but ultimately they've got to step up and put the ball in the back of the net, and that's what players do at good levels of football. And we've got some very, very, very good players who aren't quite finding the net at the moment, and that's not going to last forever. Hopefully that it happens sooner rather than later, but it's where we are at the minute. But a lot of the football we're playing and a lot of how we're playing is exceptionally good. So yeah, there's lots to be happy about, but obviously there's lots of frustration as well of not coming away with 3 points.
And just finally as well, whatever happens between now and the end of the season, how do you keep that motivation and those confidence levels up to try and finish strongly wherever you end up finishing? Yeah,
we committed to each other that we would help each other be the best we could be and improve as players. That's our motivation. That's always been the motivation. And if we improve quickly enough and as individuals and a group, then we will be up towards the top end of the table. And we've improved so much over the last kind of 18 months, 2 seasons. It's fantastic, and it's that last little bit now, and we just need that last little bit, and the players are committed to keeping on improving, and that, as I say, that's the motivation more than anything else. No matter what league you're in, you've just got to keep getting better.
That was FC Isle of Man manager Paul Jones speaking to Manx Radio's sports editor Rob Pritchard there. Now, back in 2022, Manx Radio spoke to Isla Gale, who at just 17 had been nominated for Trainee Fisherman of the Year. And over the last few years, Isla has gone from strength to strength and continued in her pursuit of a career in the fishing industry. Just recently, after studying in Scotland for several months, she achieved her Certificate of Competency as Deck Officer Class 2, becoming the first female to do so. I've been catching up with Isla, now 20, about this next step in her career.
It's definitely been a whirlwind. It's just been an amazing experience altogether. I've learned a lot about my industry and about myself within the last couple of years. I went to college up in Scotland, Nest School, and I completed my Class 2 fishing certificate. I did it over the course of a year, so I went back to sea for a bit of it. So going up to Scotland, going up to college by yourself at 19, it was such a great experience, and I'm glad I've done it, but it was also definitely an eye-opening experience for me. To my knowledge and to everybody else's knowledge I've spoke to, I'm the first woman with a Class 2 in the fishing. So there's ones you can do in the Navy and in work boots that are equivalent to it, but in the actual fishing certificate, I'm the first one to have it.
Were you surprised by that?
I was surprised that I was the first female, not by being the first Manx female, but fishing is still quite a male-dominated industry, and that's just a widely known fact. But I think by doing this, I can show people that it doesn't have to be. I've put the hard work in, and I've done the same that all the guys could have done.
I think you said the same thing as well 2 years ago. You had the same determination to prove that women can thrive in this industry. Have you still got that same drive? Are you still determined to keep going as far as you can go?
Yes, definitely. I think the more I speak out about it as well, because obviously this journey hasn't been it's been met with haters and with doubters along the way. I've doubted myself a couple of times in it, but there's definitely been a lot of people that haven't been supportive of this. Right. But there's also been the other side of it where the people have been, so I think I've seen both sides. The amount of support I've had off some people has been just overwhelming, but then other people, it just seems like they're still stuck in their old habits. And I hope that by pushing it forward and showing that a woman can do all this, that they will maybe think twice about it.
That's 20-year-old Isla Gale there, who has achieved her Certificate of Competency as Deck Officer Class 2, becoming the first female to do so. Well, Isle of Man Maritime said this is a significant milestone in her career. You can find a full extended interview available as a newscast at manxradio.com.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
Coming up to 5:25, so let's catch up with the latest sporting news with Darren Timpson. Faster my, Darren.
Faster my. Starting with cricket, a Peel and St John's combined team have made their debut in the European Cricket League today. They're in Group A alongside teams from France, Germany, Romania and Serbia. This morning they took on German side Darmstadt, where both teams scored 114 runs in their 10 overs to see the game tied. However, Darmstadt took the win with a golden ball. The Ireland team will be back in action tonight at 6 o'clock to face Bucharest in Spain. In football, Corinthians missed their chance to close the gap on Peel at the top of the Canada Life Premier League table. The Douglas side were defeated 3-2 by Foxdale, while Peel dropped 2 points at home to Russian. Peel's lead now stands at 5 points and they still have a game in hand on second place with 6 games left. The promotion fight in the Arden and Druggan Division 2 is heating up as Douglas Old Boys are within 2 points of Rycob and have a game in hand on the northern side. Braddon meanwhile have raced to a 6-point lead over second place with 5 games left. Elsewhere, Rycob, Braddon, Douglas Old Boys and Douglas Royal have all progressed to the semi-finals of the GH Colet Woods Cup. In hockey, Castletown Ladies A have taken a 4-point lead in the Women's Premier League. They beat Bacchus Ladies A 6-2 as they take a strong position in the league halfway through the season. Meanwhile, the title fight is tighter in the Men's Premier League. Bacchus A have maintained their 2-point lead over Vikings A after they beat Castletown A 10-2 on Saturday. And in rugby, Vagabonds were undone by Ashton in the county's AMD Lancashire Cheshire on Saturday. The Manx side were defeated 32-24 at home.
Darren Timpson with today's sporting news. Faster my. And Guramaya, thank you for joining us tonight. That's it for Update. Up next, we have an hour-long special agenda programme with Phil Gorn, and Chris Kinley is back at 6:30 with Greatest Hits. A reminder, you can find tonight's programme available as a podcast afterwards over at manxradio.com. Beth will be back with Update tomorrow night at the same time of 5 o'clock. In the meantime, have a good evening.